Sean, what's going on? This is a 2-on-0 rush to the net. No guest. You and I. Hockey talk. You ready for it?
We don't need no stinking guest, Dan. We can carry this all by ourselves. We'll carry the water, buddy.
Well, I'll tell you what. Austin Matthews is carrying it right now, so there's no better place to begin. If we're going to talk hockey and you're going to be two guys just sitting around talking hockey, which is exactly what this podcast is, you got to be talking about Austin Matthews. 51 goals, 54 games. Sean, I'm going to tell you this right now. I am no longer wondering, and I am no longer hoping. I am now expecting Austin Matthews to score 60 goals in 60 games. And if he does it, he'd have to slow down his pace, his current pace right now. 9 goals in the last 4 games. All he needs is 9 and 6, Sean. Wayne Gretzky, Brett Hull, Alex McGillney, Mario Lemieux. They're the only ones that have ever scored 60 goals in 60 games. I think we're going to add Austin Matthews to the list.
There's no doubt he's playing great. There's nobody on his level right now. But there are streaks. Oh, he'd just score another 9 goals, no problem. Well, it's kind of a problem. I think it would be great if he did it. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion at this point.
Well, I guess it's not a foregone conclusion, but, I do. The way he's going right now, nobody scores goals the way this guy it does. It's the release. See the shot last night, as we're recording this on Thursday, the shot he had in Arizona, it's just the release is so quick. The goalie has no time to react. I mean, it's from distance, and the release is so quick that the goalie can't even react to it. He's got it. He's feeling it. It's remarkable. Fastest U.S.-born player to reach 50. He's at 51 now. He did it 5 miles from his home, right, where he grew up. And I think that's really the special thing. His parents were on hand. He had other family on hand, and he was able to do it in Arizona to get it done there. That means a lot to him. He needed 9 games to go from 40 to 50. He's at 51 and 54. I think he could get there. 6 games, get to 60, join Gretzky, Hull, McGillney, and Lemieux. He's on pace for 76 goals. I mean, look, at this point, and I heard Mike Johnson on the radio this morning, if he doesn't get to 60, it's just a disaster at this point if he doesn't get to 60 for this season. So, yeah, I think, to be honest with you, the way he's going right now, if he doesn't get to 70, it's pretty close to a disaster. And it's asking a lot. I understand. I mean, you talk about a hot streak and all that, and it's true. But this is the expectation now for Austin Matthews. He's set the bar so high for himself by the way he can score goals.
But I do think there needs to be some reality. I mean, we're talking, you just named the list, right? And that's an unbelievable list. And there's other players who were good goal scorers in their career and never did that, right? Like Cam Neely scored 50 and 44. Mm-hmm. He didn't get to 70. Things happen, injuries, and Austin went through some of this. But I do think at this point that, the expectations are so high, and he's proven, look, he's already got 6 hat tricks this year. And I think that's more than almost every team in the league has as a team. The Canucks have 6, and I think everybody else has less. I mean, that's just bazonkers to me. So there's no question that 70's in play. Again, I just think that there needs to be a little reality check and an understanding that there are hot streaks and cold streaks. And do I expect Austin Matthews to score a goal a game for the rest of the season? No, nobody's done it.
Okay, fair. You bring the reality to the show. I bring the ridiculous opinions to the show. I appreciate
the hyperbole.
That.
You're the salesman. I get it.
Yeah. All right. We'll take that. But how about the Maple Leafs, though? 5 wins in a row. They're in Vegas tonight, Thursday night. Then they're in Colorado on Saturday. Then they got Vegas back home on the 27th, right? They begin a home stretch there against Vegas, Arizona, the Rangers, Bruins, Sabres. But the Maple Leafs have won 5 games in a row. Yeah, you're riding an Austin Matthews hot streak in doing so. But as they've done this, I'm wondering, Sean, are you becoming more of a believer in the Maple Leafs, or are we still at the stage of it does not matter at all what the Maple Leafs do right now, that it only matters what they do in the playoffs? And that's an obvious statement that it only matters what they do in the playoffs. But in terms of believing, their reality of going on a Stanley Cup run this year, or at least a long playoff run, is there anything that's convinced you that there's the capability of them to do that within this 5-game winning streak?
I don't believe in the Toronto Maple Leafs. I still don't. Austin Matthews is one player. Willie Nylander's one player. Like, when you look at them as a team, I don't see a team that can go deep in the playoffs, right? I see a little hint of it now. Since Morgan Riley's been out, it almost seems like that was a wake-up call for them, his suspension, right? They've done most of this without him in the lineup. And, maybe they looked at themselves and they said, hey, this is the team that we need to be. This is how we need to play. With their goaltending and their defense, unless they do something at the trade deadline, which, by the way, Dan, is sneaking up on us 2 weeks and a day out, unless they do something, and I don't know what they can do. I mean, all they added last year, they're going to go through that again. I think they learned you can't add 6. But, they used a lot of capital in doing that, and are they gun-shy now? I know it's a new regime and whatever, but the ammunition, I don't know if it's there. And like I said, with the goaltending and the defense they have, I think, in the playoffs, Austin Matthews would have to score 6 goals a game, and he's going to face the stiffest competition. And he's going to be game planned for. You don't game plan for Austin Matthews in one night. He comes rolling into Arizona. They're not game planning for him. They know who he is and where he's going to be and whatever. You're going to play Austin Matthews in a 7-game series. You're going to have a plan for him, and he's going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing Florida or Boston in the first round. That's where they're at right now. And I think Florida, we'll get to this a little later, but I think Florida's the best team in the National Hockey League right now. And they're playing like it, but their stats back it up. Their game plan backs it up. Their size backs it up. All of those things. They are the team to beat in the Eastern Conference right now, more than the Bruins are.
Do you think that Austin Matthews can score 7 goals in 7 games against the Florida Panthers?
Oh, I think he could score 7 goals in 7 games. I don't know that they play 7 games, to be honest with you. So he could score 7 goals in 4 games, and the Maple Leafs could still lose in 4. That's the Panthers. That's the Maple Leafs. I think you're going to see Austin Matthews produce in the playoffs regardless, but is it going to be enough? Are the Maple Leafs going to be able to keep it out enough? And that's what leads me to think that they do need to do something at the deadline, and we're talking March 8th is the deadline. And we hear all about it. Like the Calgary Flames, right? We talk about them being in control here a little bit of the deadline, right? With Chris Tanev and Noah Hannafin, who is still not signed, obviously, and I think will be traded. From everything I've heard, and talking to people around Calgary when they were at Madison Square Garden earlier last week, is the fact that they're just going to hold out until somebody gives them a first-round pick for Chris Tanev. The Maple Leafs should do that. Like they should do that. He's the type of player that they need. They have their first round pick. It means nothing to you if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs to draft in the first round this year. If you give it up and you do what you think you're capable of doing, well, then that first round pick is going to be 28, 29, 30, 31, 32 in that neighborhood, right? So whatever, give it up. Get Chris Tanev, give yourself a chance. And I don't know what the hesitation is. I understand a first round pick looks great. That first round pick, if it goes to Calgary, not a player in the National Hockey League for 2 years, minimum, right? Unless you get really lucky. Chris Tanev, 34-year-old defenseman, brings a lot of bite, physicality, some snarl to this game, still got some mobility to him as well. He comes in and plays defense for the Toronto Maple Leafs. All of a sudden, they look a lot bigger. They look a lot tougher. They look a lot better around the front of their own net. And you're giving up a guy who you don't even know who the guy is. It's not even a guy right now. It's just a pick. I would do it right now if I were the Toronto Maple Leafs, if that's the cost.
So you believe if they add, they can win the whole thing?
I believe if they add to positions of need, defense is a position of need, it gives them a much better chance of winning in the first round. I don't think they beat Florida. They could beat Boston. Boston has its own holes. Boston isn't playing all that great right now. They have a pedigree. They have a winning pedigree, and they've been really good this season, probably surprisingly good based on, the losses that they had last season and how they lost last season. They've been really good, but I don't see why the Toronto Maple Leafs, if they add with the frontline scoring that they have, if they beef up their back end, can beat a team like the Boston Bruins. Remember, Boston's going to have the same issue going into the playoffs as they had last year. 2 really good goalies, but who's starting? And how do you handle it, right? Who's their number one center? Can any of their buddy on their top 2 lines really shut down Matthews, Marner, Nylander? And if they can, well, more credit to them, right? If they can. It's a different team. Now you can flip it around and say, can anybody shut down David Pastrnak, right? I understand that argument. But I think they could beat Boston. I don't think they could beat Florida. I don't think they end up playing Florida in the first round. I think they do end up playing Boston in the first round, and you got to beef up your defense to win that series.
So you're going to forfeit another first-round pick to win maybe a round?
Well, once you win one round, you don't know where momentum takes you, right? You don't know where momentum takes you. You have no idea what injuries the other teams are dealing with or what you're dealing with. Yeah, I'm giving up the first-round pick that the Toronto Maple Leafs have right now because the window's here. It's open. It's wide open. It's time, right? It's like, let's go. The first-round pick means nothing to them. It's what they do this season, what they do next season. Those are the things that matter to the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's not building for the future. It's not drafting a guy who may play on your team in 3 years. It's irrelevant. You deal with that later on. If you're Toronto, you got to win now. And that first-round pick is no good for you if it doesn't help you win right now. So absolutely, I'm giving up that first-round pick. There is no question in my mind that I'm giving it up. And I'm giving it up for a guy who I know is going to help my back end in a big way.
Let me ask you this, Dan. Rank the goaltenders of the 16 teams that are in the playoffs right now. Not teams that could make the playoffs, because that would skew it a little bit. 16 teams that are in the playoffs right now. Where do the Toronto Maple Leafs come in at goaltending?
Well, they're probably low. But there's a pedigree with Samsonov that where this guy...
What's his pedigree?
Well, people believe he can get going. He's not some random AHL call-up. I mean, this guy was considered one of the better prospects for a long time. Okay,
and what has he done with it? And why did Washington get rid of him?
There's probably multiple reasons there, but one of the reasons was he didn't.
One
perform.
of them had to do with the playoffs.
Yeah, okay, I'm giving that to you. There's no question about it. Their goaltending is a huge question mark. I get it. So is Vegas's goaltending.
It is?
Was. Last year, it was a question. Was it not?
Not to me, it wasn't.
You were believing that Adin Hill at the start of the season was, at the start of the playoffs, Adin Hill was going to go win the Stanley Cup for the Vegas Golden Knights, or Laurent Brossoit was going to go do it, or Jonathan Quick was going to go do it? That's what your belief was?
No, that wasn't what my belief was, but my belief was that they were a way better team. Way better.
That's why you add.
So you think the Maple Leafs can add and become the Vegas Golden Knights?
I did not say that.
I'll see you on the dark side of the moon, my friend.
Oh, my God. I did not say that. I think the Maple Leafs can add and become a better team that can win in the playoffs. You disagree. I get it. All right. Let's move on. We'll move on to the next subject. Jake Gensel, Pittsburgh Penguins. We may disagree on this one, too. Kyle Dubas, former GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, came out publicly and did not shoot down the idea of trading Jake Gensel, who is currently on long-term injured reserve with an upper body injury, but will be back this season. He said there's a possibility, and their next 8 games or less will determine that. Well, the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sean, have won 1 of their last 6 games. They are currently 8 points out of a wild card spot. They have 2 games in hand, but they are 8 points out of a wild card spot. I don't see it getting better. They don't have Jake Gensel in their lineup right now, and they're struggling, right? They're struggling without him. He's got 52 points in 50 games this season. We know how good he is, okay? But he's a pending UFA. He's going to want big money in the next contract. He's 29, turning 30 soon. Penguins look like they're going nowhere this season. Kyle Dubas left open that window, left it open, said this might happen, and I think it should happen. We've talked about this before. You've disagreed. Have you changed your opinion at all?
Yeah, I have. I can't justify keeping that core together when they don't want to be together, it seems like. Like they haven't earned the right to demand anything. And that's no reflection on Crosby or Letang or Malkin, right? That's just this team as a whole isn't good enough, right? That loss to the Islanders is inexcusable.
Yeah.
Like that to me right there, and you don't do anything rashly, and I wouldn't do anything rashly, but that's when, if I'm Pittsburgh management, I start to say maybe this isn't it. This isn't, even if we get in, this isn't it. If we're going to lose games like that and we can't score over 2 goals a game with the talent that we have, I need to change things. And the best way to change things is to see what kind of bounty you can get for probably the best forward that's going to be on the market.
100%. Right? Crosby's not going anywhere. Malkin's not going anywhere. Letang, Carlson, they're probably not going anywhere. So, and Kyle Dubas is right. Like, you can't rebuild when you've got them. They're still too good. It's what he said, and he's right about that. You can't rebuild when you got them. But you can trade Jake Gensel, and you can get younger. You can get pieces. You can get assets that are going to help you. You can stay relevant with the guys that you have, and maybe things change next year, right? Maybe things change where they retool around it a little bit. They don't sign Gensel, but they use the money they would have given Gensel to sign 2 players, right? And it makes them a little bit deeper and a little bit better. You use the assets that you have, maybe in a trade, to make your team. You still want to try to win with Crosby and Malkin and Letang and Karlsson. I understand that, but they're not winning this year with these guys. We know what's coming. They're just putting it off. But this is an opportunity to trade a guy who's going to help you when you put it off, essentially, right? You know what I mean? Like, you're putting off that rebuild. These pieces, these assets you can get for Jake Gensel are going to help you. You're going to fast track that part of it before even getting there, if you will. And then they can retool around it in the offseason and make some changes. Remember, this is Kyle Dubas' first season there in Pittsburgh. He's seeing what's there. He's getting an idea of what's in the system. He's understanding the players that are around right now. Gensel shouldn't be around beyond March 8th. It doesn't make sense, especially if they don't sign him before March 8th. They definitely shouldn't do that. But I don't see a reason to sign him. They, like you said, they haven't earned the right to say we need to keep this guy because we can go win. They've got 8 games remaining before the deadline. They're 8 points back. I don't see it coming. They're 1-4-1 in their last 6. Where's it going?
Sidney Crosby's made some pretty good wingers in his career. And I'm not saying Jake Gensel's not a good player. He most certainly is. Is he a better player with Crosby and the talent that they have? I think so. And so you bring in another player that's like that, who's maybe underperforming a little bit, and all of a sudden he gets a little Crosby magic and he's off to the races. So, I think there's a fear in overvaluing players. And that wasn't what I was doing when I was making that argument. My argument was a loyalty argument that management owed players something because of what the players had done for that team and for that city. But they haven't earned that loyalty this year. They've been given every opportunity to earn that loyalty, and they haven't been able to deliver. And at some point, I think everybody understands this is a business. You make concessions for people. I honestly believe that you have to do that at some point. You make concessions for people that are important to your franchise. We just saw it with the Yager retirement, right? And what happened there, and the fact that he left and there were so many hard feelings, and then he was able to come back, and it was such a Cinderella story. If there had been concessions made there, who knows what would have been different. So I do believe that you make concessions for your iconic players. But your iconic players have to deliver as well, and they haven't this year. Look, Sid's played great, but it's not working.
It's not working. You can't fall in love with your guys either. You can't, as a general manager or president of hockey operations, just absolutely fall in love with your guys and believe what they did 6 years ago is relevant to do what they can do now, or 7 years ago is relevant to what they can do now. It's not. It's changed. Remember, years ago, the Los Angeles Kings, Dean Lombardi fell in love with those players, right? He fell in love. Mike Richards is the perfect example. He fell in love with them. He signed him. He was like, we're going to keep going. Didn't work. It fell apart. The dynasty crumbled and before it really became a dynasty, and Lombardi lost his job. He's out. He was out, and you just can't, as a GM, fall in love. You have to make the right move. Julien Brisebois is the perfect example of a guy who's not. Look, Tampa won the Stanley Cup back-to-back years. Alex Killorn, they didn't re-sign him. Andre Palat, they didn't re-sign him. Tyler Johnson, they traded him. Those were big, huge pieces. Not the cornerstone pieces of Stamkos and Kucherov and Hedman and Vasilevsky, point two, but we're not talking about Crosby and Malkin and Letang. We're talking about Jake Gensel, great player, but so was Palat for the Lightning, and Johnson for the Lightning, and Killorn, right? And those guys eventually you have to move on from. Julien Brisebois, the Lightning, they didn't fall in love with them. They recognized how far they went with them and said, we can't continue this path. We have to go a different path. There's other things going on with the Lightning right now that we can get into, but that's the example that I think you need to follow as a GM. You have to there's got to be a level of shrewdness, if you will.
Yeah, and there has to be a level of just non-compassion, right? My argument has always been that you do owe certain players things, and I think that exists in Pittsburgh, and maybe I'm wrong, and that's why I'm not a GM, but I do believe that when players deliver things to an organization, that organization owes them in return. And I think that's the case with Tampa Bay, right? You're talking about Tampa Bay. Like, I think Stamkos has earned that loyalty, right? And I think he's a little miffed that he hasn't received that back yet, right? I think he would have liked to have been signed and not have to wait like he's been forced to wait. And personally, I just think, and I understand that sometimes it handcuffs a franchise, but there's only so many championships to be won, right? And at the end, even with the best team, you're not always going to win the championship. So, you should take care of the players that brought you to the summit.
The Stamkos thing is very interesting with Tampa Bay because that's the guy, right? We've talked about this, right? He's the guy that they're sort of like, to me, that's the example of, all right, let's see where this goes before we make the big decision. But that's Julien BriseBois, and that's the way the Lightning have operated. And I admire it because they're taking the compassion out of it and basically giving a full evaluation, a full analysis of exactly where they are. There's only so many championships you can win. You're not going to win every championship, but Julien BriseBois' job in Tampa Bay is to put the best team on the ice that can win the Stanley Cup, right? And if he believes at the end of this season, if they don't go anywhere, that Steven Stamkos is not part of that anymore, he will not sign him. He's earned the loyalty of not trading him at this point, right? But if you look at the Lightning, they need change. I would, if I'm Julien BriseBois, and I wrote about this in our Super 16 this week, which we all kind of acted as a general manager of the general manager of the team. And I said, if I was the GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning, I would be taking big risks. I would be taking swings because you don't know how long it's going to last. But the window there is still open with the guys you have right now. The problem is with Tampa, I don't know how big of a swing they can take. Not having Sergachev is a huge loss. It does open up $8.5 million in salary cap space because he's on LTIR. But, Sean, they don't have the capital to trade. They don't have the draft picks, and they don't have the top prospects. They've depleted their system in previous years. So, yeah, they need a defenseman. They would love to have Noah Hannafin from the Calgary Flames. Like, that would be a perfect fit. And then you even re-sign him, and everything would be great, right? I don't know how they can get him. Like, if you're Calgary, you're looking at Tampa Bay and going, I can get a better deal elsewhere. They don't have a first-round pick or a second-round pick this year. They don't have a first-round pick next year. And they don't have anybody who's like a top 10 prospect in the world that you got to get traded for. Got a couple of good guys, but there's better places elsewhere to go for the guys that Tampa Bay needs. I don't know how they make a trade.
Yeah, no, I don't know how they do either, but I also can't envision a world in which Steven Stamkos is in a Tampa Bay Lightning. And maybe I'm just an emotional mess, right? Like maybe I'm just somebody who lives in the clouds but there is a cachet, I think, to having your franchise player finish his career with your team. And you say that Julien BriseBois is in the business to win, and he is. He's also in the business to entertain his fans.
Well, if they don't sign Stamkos, it will make a lot of people unhappy. But if they don't sign Stamkos and next year they go on a deep playoff run, nobody's going to be thinking about Steven Stamkos.
Okay. Well, we're different. I don't think that's true.
Well, they'll be like, oh, well, it'd be great if Stamkos was around for this, but hey, it's fun to watch our team go into the Eastern Conference Final again, right? I mean, fans forget too. They're loyal, but they're loyal to the team that's on the ice. And if they're going to be upset if Stamkos were to leave, and we're not saying he's going to leave, but if they're going to be upset if he were to leave, but if he leaves and the Lightning go on a run next year, they're going to be fine with it because the Lightning are going on a run next year. It's the business of the game. I understand where you're coming from in terms of the loyalty. I do. I also think there's got to be like you said, the compassion can't be there from the ownership and from the GMs. If you want to stay a contender and you want to stay relevant for a long period of time, I don't think that can be there. By the way, I got a question about the Tampa Bay Lightning in my mailbag. That's in there. Another question I got in the mailbag, Sean, was about the Seattle Kraken and if they should sell. I'll run down the list of pending UFAs for them. You got Jordan Eberle, Alex Wenberg, Thomas Tatar, Justin Schultz, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, and Chris Driedger. It's a lot, right? I mean, that's a lot of part of your team that may not be back. None of those guys could be back next season. They're 3 points back of the Blues. I'll reserve my answer. It's written. It's on NHL.com. You can read it. Where are you with the Seattle Kraken? If you're the Kraken, if you're Ron Francis at this present time, when you're 3 points back, but the Wild and the Predators are in your way too, are you looking to sell?
Yeah, I'm playing let's make a deal. as much as I can. Like, look, Seattle is in a different place. Yes, they went to the playoffs last year, and yes, they upset the Colorado Avalanche. You look at how top heavy the West is this year, right? I don't know that that's going to happen again. They've been not anywhere near as consistent. They're not as anywhere near spread out. They're much more concentrated in what they're doing. I think they're an easier team to play against this year than they were last year, and they're new. Like, just because the Vegas Golden Knights rewrote the expansion rules by going to the Stanley Cup final in their first year, you're still building a franchise. They don't have a farm system to speak of, right? They're still adding pieces, and they're coming up and whatever, but they do not have a pipeline as of this minute. You start dealing those players, your pipeline's running a little faster, a little deeper, with a little bit more quality crude in it.
I'm going to play devil's advocate and take the other side, because that's what I did that in my mailbag. And I understand everything you just said. It makes sense. It does. For a normal team, I think that's what you do in the position of the Seattle Kraken. Because, yeah, the West is top heavy. Those 6 teams, Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg, Vegas, Edmonton, Vancouver, they're way better than the other teams that could be fighting for that are fighting. The Los Angeles Kings look a lot better right now, but that could also just be a hot streak. They did lose 7-0 to the Buffalo Sabres not that long ago. But I think the Kraken are in a different position. They made the playoffs last year. It energized that market in a huge way. And you want to build on that. You don't want to tear it down. You don't want to go backwards right away. Normal market, normal situation, you sell. This one's a little bit different for me. If they make the playoffs again, that continues to energize that Seattle market. And they may lose in the first round, but they get more playoff hockey, a more understanding of what it's all about. And it mattered. It mattered last year. It brought more people to the table. It energized that market, and I think you want to build on that, not go backwards. Even if going backwards may be actually the right thing to do for your long term, I do think that in the short term, getting in the playoffs again, and they're not that far out. And we've seen Seattle go on a hot streak this year. We've seen them be able to do it. Getting in this season, back-to-back years, would make a big difference in that market. I really do think that.
Did you sleep through the Winter Classic?
What do you mean?
Did you sleep through it?
No, I was there. I enjoyed every second of it.
Did you see the city?
Yeah.
Did you see the fans?
Yes.
You think they're going to go away if they don't make the playoffs?
No, but you can build more. You can bring more to the table. You can keep them energized, keep them going. If you have a dark spring in Seattle, it's not going to help you.
It's not going to hurt you either, and your team's going to be better.
Are you? What are you getting for Jordan Eberle, Alex Wenberg, Thomas Tatar, Schultz,
You're getting
Stringer,
capital.
Bellemare?
You're getting capital.
You're getting game changers. You're getting a guy who's
No.
a first-round pick.
We just talked about the fact that certain teams have nothing in their system, right? And they're at a weak point where they can't make moves because they have absolutely nothing in their system. The Seattle Kraken have 3 years of draft picks. That's it. And they haven't hit on all of them. Nobody does. So where's their depth? Where is their ability to package things together when they want to make a trade and do things? Where's the players pushing the players that are there to say, you know what, your time's over. Here I come. They're not there. They're scraping together lineups. You need to add to your talent pool. You need to put more people in that pool saying, I want to play. I deserve to play. I need to play. And you can do it 2 ways. You can deplete it and add and go for it. They can't just stand pat. If you're going to go, you add. You're going to stand pat and be cannon fodder for 3 home games? If you're lucky, you got to add.
So do that.
With what?
Go out and try to get guys. Go out
With
and get
what?
an offenseman. Go out and get some offense. Go
With
get Jake
what?
Gensel.
With what?
Go get Jake Gensel.
With what?
Well, some of your draft capital and a few of your prospects. Go out and do that. Isn't the idea to win?
The idea is to be competitive long term. You just talked about what happened to the Kings when they fell off the map.
Yeah,
right?
they're back now. But yes, I understand. But hey,
And this is a fragile ecosystem. There is nothing there. That's the reality of being an expansion team. Is there's no foundation. You built a house. You didn't put a foundation under it.
So if you trade these guys and you don't make it, well, if you trade these guys, you're not making it. What's your plan for the Seattle Kraken?
My plan is to continue to add. You're an 8 to 10 team, right? That's where you've kind of played at since your existence. You add a little bit in free agency because you're going to have some money, and you continue to play that game until you're stocked. Yeah, that's what Ron Francis did in Carolina.
He did, and it's worked out without him now.
Yeah, and look at that team now. That's his team. The core of that team is a drafted team of young, really good players. You want to give all that away?
No, you're making sense. Do you give it some time though? Do you wait before the deadline? I wait before the deadline. I want to try to make the playoffs. That's me. I want to try to make the playoffs. So we differ in that opinion. You make sense. I understand it, but I want to try to make the playoffs. I brought it up before, Sean. Best team in the National Hockey League. I say the Florida Panthers. They have the best points percentage, 696 right now. They're 12th in goals per game, but I think that's okay. You know, you're middle of the pack in goals per game, that's fine, 3.34. It's all right when you're second in goals against at 2.43. Obviously, I did my homework here. I've got the numbers, okay? Top 5 power play, top 5 penalty kill. First in shots per game, second in shots against per game. Most shots per game, second fewest shots against per game. Argue against that. Or do you believe it? Are they the best team in the National Hockey League right now, the Florida Panthers?
Well, I don't believe it because I couldn't even pretend that I believe it because there's proof on the site today.
That's true.
And our
sticking with Edmonton.
Well, yeah. I mean, what? And look, I did that before last night. To get ahead of the curve. So that loss to the Bruins didn't impact either of those teams' rankings. But Edmonton's still, 30-8 in their last 38 games? That's a pretty good run. And Connor McDavid is playing otherworldly. Like you spent the whole beginning of the show talking about Austin Matthews. I mean, Connor McDavid all of a sudden is back in the scoring. Remember the guy that had 8 points at the Heritage Classic? He doesn't exist anymore.
If he climbs back, is he now a favorite for the Hart Trophy?
He would be in the conversation. Look, I'd have to put Austin Matthews there because I think he's covered a host of sins for that team. And we made that very clear, I think, in our opener. Yeah, and you know that I've never been a Connor McDavid.
Yes. No, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, no, you'd have to put him there because of the way that he's dragged this team back from the abyss. This is the first time he's done that, though, right? Before he just put up a lot of points.
Right.
Now he's carrying a team. I think his role has changed a bit. So I still had Edmonton as number one. I buy all of your arguments about Florida. I'm of the opinion, at times that the number one team has to lose its ranking. Maybe that another team can't take it as much, but it's right there. It's I think Edmonton's hanging on by its fingernails.
But you also are of the belief when we do the Super 16, and you put a lot of emphasis on this, who would win in a 7-game series? So at this point, you believe Edmonton would beat Florida in a 7-game series?
Barely, right? Like right now, Florida's on its way up, right? Like, and like winning streaks are weird, right? Because I still have no faith in the Rangers. And what have they won? 8 in a row?
Yeah, 8 in a row.
Yeah, no faith at all. It's a combination of things, and to me, Florida's right there. Like that's and they went up for me this week. I moved them up for sure, and I just thought that I would give Edmonton one more week at where they are, and can they prove to me that they belong to still be there?
How come you have no faith in the Rangers?
Because of the way they played before the winning streak, because of the fact that much like the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're not very deep. Like with the injuries that they've had, they have guys playing way, way up in their lineup, and I don't think Shesterkin's been very good.
Well, he was very good against Dallas. He was not very good in the outdoor game, which was fantastic. We haven't even touched on that, by the way. It was fantastic. But the whole weekend was fantastic. And he was very good before the outdoor game. I buy all the other things. I think Shesterkin's fine. I think he's going to be fine. He hasn't had a dynamite season. I buy all the other arguments. Their depth is in question. There is no question about it. They're going to be a very interesting team to watch here in the next 2 weeks about the trade deadline, because they're not going. I cannot see them going in to a playoff situation with 3 AHL call-ups among their top 12 forwards. And I'm talking about Johnny Brodzinski, who just got a 2-year deal, a one-way both years, who's playing third-line center for them right now, Adam Edstrom and Matt Rempe, who are towering presences on the fourth line. By the way, I'm not a big fighting guy, Sean, but that Matt Rempe fighting and Matt Martin, that was pretty cool. And what Rempe said after the game in the Stadium Series, he said he thanked Martin for giving it to him. Like for giving him his first fight in the NHL. Just a little tangent here, side note. I thought that was really cool.
It was, and that we didn't talk about the outdoor games, and they were amazing, right? I went Saturday as a fan. You stopped by my tailgate, and to watch the game with my family, and to remember what it's like, what the people who listen to our podcast, what their experiences are like. You get so jaded sometimes, I think, being in the press box and doing it for a living, that every once in a while it's good to kind of get that jolt back and hear what people are saying around you. When you're at the game, none of the stuff that we get all wrapped up in is all that important. It's the game on the ice, right? And it's a spectacle, and that's what this weekend was. It was crazy, right? I mean, the Devil Flyer game was great. The live band, the Gaslight Anthem playing every time the Devil scored was one of the coolest things that I can think of that's ever been done at one of those games. And then Sunday, that game was just banana land. The Islanders came out and really stuck it to them. And that's why I don't have faith in the Rangers, right? Right there is why I don't have faith in the Rangers. They got caved in. And then they came back against a really fragile team. Do you think they can come back like that against the Bruins or against the Panthers or even against the Devils? If the Devils were to make it, I don't think so. But those games were unbelievable.
It was a great weekend, and especially, listen, I mean, on a personal level, I live and grew up 15 minutes from MetLife Stadium, right? And I grew up going to games at Continental or Brendan Byrne Arena before. That arena's still standing right next to MetLife. I grew up going to games at Giant Stadium, which obviously is not there anymore, but MetLife is there, and it was great to experience it and to be a part of it and to cover them. An absolute privilege, but also just on a personal level, it was really cool to see hockey become center stage at MetLife Stadium with over 150,000 fans. What's interesting is I was asked a question in my mailbag, and this was, can you do this in other places? Can you play the doubleheader the way they did in other places? And what was unique about this, as you well know, as everybody well knows, is the fact that 3 of these teams this was their market, right? And the other one, the Flyers, not far away. If you have to do this in another market, you're asking 3 fan bases to travel to that market. In this one, they could take public transportation to get there. The Flyer fans probably drove. They didn't have to. They could take the train or the bus, right? And they didn't have to stay over. Maybe some did, but they didn't have to stay over. On that night game. But let's say you did this in Chicago, okay, at Soldier Field, and you have the Blackhawks, the Blues, the Predators, and the Wild, okay? You're asking fans from Nashville, Minnesota, and St. Louis to all travel to Chicago, right? And for one of those games, you're asking to fill a stadium of visiting fans. Of fans that have to travel in. I don't think it can work. I think it's too much of an ask to do it in another market. The only one I think that might be able to get it done just geographically is LA, right? Let's say you played a doubleheader at Dodger Stadium, right? Or SoFi, which would be amazing, right? And you have the Kings playing in one game and the Ducks playing in the other. The Ducks have to be a better team than they are right now to make it happen. Then at least you get 2 home teams and 2 road teams. And maybe Vegas goes and maybe, Arizona or San Jose go. And it's not that big of a trip. But it's still a trip. It's still an overnight. It's still travel accommodations to do it. It's asking a lot for fans to do that. And when you do the one-offs, right, the Winter Classic, the Heritage, the normal Stadium Series game, the majority of the fans that go to those games are the local market teams. You get some that travel in, but they're not filling the stadium. And that's what you would ask them to do. So I think that's what made this unique, and that's why I don't think it can be done in another market.
While you were talking, I was thinking about it. Like, if you were to do it in Chicago, they're the home team for both games. Play on a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday night. So, you knock one of those teams out. Once they're good again, they can almost fill it by themselves. They've shown that, right? You don't even need, those are their home games. You don't even need the other team's fans to show up. It's great for the aesthetics and whatever, and you would still get some fans. But, to me, you just have the one team play both games. But the other thing, and I think the thing that everybody missed, and it may just be me and my nostalgia of my childhood with my dad, growing up and going to Patriot games and whatever, the atmosphere in the parking lot was a huge part of that game, right? Devil fans, when I moved here in the early 90s, Devil fans would tailgate all the time because the building's right in that same parking lot as what was then Giants Stadium, right? Especially when you got into the playoffs. Like, it was like Carolina. They would tailgate, for a long time before the game started. And I think that was a huge draw, right? Even for the fans that came up from Philly. Like, you're not just coming up and going to the game. It was a day-long hockey celebration. I mean, we were there at 2 o'clock for an 8 o'clock face-off. I felt like I was late. Like, I wanted to get there even earlier. I kept bugging my buddy. I'm like, hey, when you coming? When you coming? We got to get there before it's full. It was 2 o'clock. The game started at 8:15. And so I think that's a huge part of it, right? It was a bigger draw than just the hockey.
I'm a little disappointed you showed up at 2 o'clock. I would have expected you there earlier.
The gates didn't open till 2, Dan.
Yeah, but you get in line.
I was barred. I was barred from going in earlier.
Fair enough. Next year, by the way, Columbus gets their outdoor game, and it's at Ohio Stadium, the Horseshoe. Over 100,000, right? And Nick Kotzanika, our colleague at NHL.com, frequent guest on the podcast, he's from Michigan. He went to the University of Michigan. He lives in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Yeah, I've heard about that.
He went to the University of Michigan?
Have you ever heard about that? He's told stories.
No, I didn't even know that he was a Michigan man.
Oh, well, then you obviously have your headphones on and they're noise canceling all the time that Nick is around. Anyway, he had a great he had the perfect slogan for selling that game. Beat Michigan. Just sell that to the Columbus faithful, right? Sell that. Send it out. If you're the Ohio State Alumni Association, send it out to your alumni. Beat Michigan. They'll show up. It's an opportunity to beat a team from Michigan, right? They'll show up. I'm looking forward to that one. It's a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. The Blue Jackets, I would hope, get better than they've been this season. Obviously, Jarmo Kekalainen getting fired, which I don't even think we've talked about, by the way, Sean. We really haven't even broached that subject, but he's out, so they'll got to get a new GM. Apparently, there's a lot of interest. And look, one thing Jarmo Kekalainen has done, he's left the cupboard's not bare in Columbus. They've got a lot of young players, but they never had the overall team success that you wanted to. They had some, but one playoff win in 11 years as a GM is just not nearly enough. As great of a playoff win as that was against Tampa Bay, it's not enough. And then the Babcock situation, but they get their outdoor game. I hope they're a better team next year. And there you sell it. Beat Michigan.
Well, and also beat the record, right? It's not even to beat the Red Wings. It's beat the record.
Beat Michigan.
Right? Michigan, the big house holds the record. So, pack the pack the shoe and see what happens. And I think Columbus will be better. I mean, they have so many good young players, right? It's such an attractive job, I think, for a GM because of the stableness of the organization. Look, Yarmo went that long and he only won one playoff series, right? Like, it's not like the owners are chomping at the bit for change. That they've been pretty consistent with, sticking with what they have and trying to make it better. And I think that they're in a position where some of their young talent is going to start paying off, and they are going to get consistently better. I mean, let's not forget, we can't put our heads in the sand. Both of us thought that Columbus would be better this year than they were.
Yeah.
They've had a horrendous year, starting with Mike Babcock, Fantilli getting hurt, numerous other things, Pascal Vincent having to start as a coach without much preparation. Like, it just has not been an ideal year. So I think they're going to be a better team. And that Red Wing team is right at the cusp of being really competitive. So I can't wait to go back to Columbus. I think it's a fantastic city.
Listen, their last home game was February 10th against the Tampa Bay Lightning. This is a team that's been out of it all season, basically, right? They're not going anywhere this season. Their GM just got fired. 18,876 fans at Nationwide Arena. So as bad as they've been, and they have been a franchise that has given their fan base nothing, almost nothing, to really feel good about. One playoff series win in their entire existence, right? 18,000 plus at a home game against the Tampa Bay Lightning on a Saturday night. That tells you a lot about the market. I think it's a great hockey market. I want this. I'm not a fan. I'm not fanboying here. I want this team to be good because those people in Columbus deserve it.
And that, Dan, is why, if you're Ron Francis, you sell.
Wow, you brought that one back. I don't even know how you weaved your way back into that one. We moved past that. I kind of agreed with you on that one. But we're talking about Columbus here.
But I'm just saying, you just laid out all the reasons why they shouldn't be supported, and they are. Because I think that market, and I think Seattle also will handle anything. They're hockey markets. They're not winning markets. They're not pedigree markets. They're hockey markets.
I'll tell you right now, the fans of the Seattle Kraken are going to be royally upset if their only playoff win 20 years from now is against the Colorado Avalanche last year.
But it won't be because they're going to do it right.
Okay, fine. We did talk about best team in the NHL before. I think it's Florida. You're still going number one with the Edmonton Oilers. But regarding the Panthers, one thing we didn't get to, and I wanted to get to it just quickly before we go, should they do anything? The trade deadline is coming up. It's 2 weeks and a day from right now. Does Bill Zito need to do anything with that team? Sean, I don't think he does.
Nothing. And I think
Right?
we've learned over the past couple of years, don't mess with success. Like, I think some really good teams in this league have messed themselves up by feeling that they had to add, right, and change the chemistry of their room. I mean, we talked about the Toronto Maple Leafs and trying to add 6. I mean, I think that's a third of your team. That's kind of folly because, there's so much that goes into it besides, just the players, right? It's systems, it's personalities, it's chemistry, it's all those things. Florida, to me, is culture. It's not talent. They're not the most talented team in the league, but they might have the best culture, right? They have a great coach who gets his message across. They have great leaders and very different leaders in Barkov and Tkachuk. They have some talented pieces, but it is a commitment to playing hockey one way. And I don't know if you bring other players in that they pick that up quick enough. Because the Florida Panthers didn't pick it up quick enough. The Florida Panthers took a long time to pick up what Paul Maurice was selling. And now they have. And now they're really good. They were really good at the end of last year. They're really good now. But it's because they believed. They didn't believe at the beginning of last year, and they weren't good. And now you're going to ask some players to come in and say, this is really hard. I'm not sure I believe in this. And by the time they believe, it's too late.
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to own this. I didn't pick them to make the playoffs this year. I don't think I'm alone in that. Ekblad, Tkachuk, those injuries. I didn't think that they were going to be able to
Montour.
overcome Montour. I didn't think they were going to be able to overcome it. And now, February 22nd, I'm calling them the best team in the National Hockey League.
Well, you flip-flop all the time, Dan, so it's
That's
okay.
not a flip-flop. That's allowing the thing to play out a little bit here.
You never hold on to a position for very long.
I'm clearly not going to pick them to not make the playoffs right now. They're a playoff
But
team.
You've probably had 10 number one teams this year.
By the way, before we get out of here, hold on. You're telling me I flip-flop? Thank you to our producer, Bob Bender, because he just put a note in our little chat here. You flip-flopped on Jake Gensel. Let's not forget about that.
Wow, I thought Bob Bender was asleep.
Nope. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the hockey.